Hello students, welcome to the daily news analysis. I hope you all are doing great. So today we'll be understanding the important news articles of 8th of March 2022. On the very first page of the Hindu, we had this news about the elections to 13 Rajya Sabha seats in 6 states, right? So before I jump into this topic, let me actually clarify you with regard to the Rajya Sabha elections. So guys, we know that Rajya Sabha is a upper house of the parliament, right? There are two houses of the parliament. The upper house is called as Rajya Sabha. It has 245 members, right? You all know that out of 245, 233 are elected members. They are elected members, and remaining 12 are nominated, right? So those people who have excelled in the field of literature, arts, social services and sciences. So there are only 4 fields mentioned in the constitution under article 80 clause 2, right? So article 80 clause 2 says that those people who have excelled in the field of literature, arts, science and social services, right? I repeat, literature, arts, science and social services would be nominated by the president of the country into the Rajya Sabha because of their excellency, right? And the rest of the 233 are elected. How they're elected? Through indirect election. We all know how it takes place. Well, people vote for the Vidhan Sabha elections. They elect MLAs, right? MLAs sit in Vidhan Sabha, right? And MLAs in turn, I'm talking about the elected MLAs. MLAs in turn elect the Rajya Sabha MPs. And how many? 233, right? So when people are electing for the Vidhan Sabha elections, they do it by direct election, and the method that they follow is first past the post. FPTP, right? First past the post, right? For example, first past the post means, let's say there are 4 candidates, A, B, C and D. Candidate A has got, let's say 40 votes out of 100. So let's say total votes are 100. Candidate A got 40, B got 30, C got, let's say 15 and D got 15, right? So it comes to 100, right? So who would win the election? Definitely candidate A would win the election, so he would be the winner, right? Now in this case, we are not concerned about who has secured absolute majority. Absolute majority means 51. So we are not bothered about absolute majority or the halfway mark. What we consider here is, right, the highest number of votes, and this is called as first past the post. The person who first passes the pillar, or the person who first passes the post, or the person who has secured the highest number of votes is declared as winner, right? I hope we are clear with this. First past the post, right? So people elects the MLAs into the state in the Vidhan Sabha through first past the post system, FPTP, first past the post, and the MLAs in turn would elect the Rajya Sabha MPs, right? Now in first past the post or in direct election, the method that we use is, one man, when you go to cast your vote, cast definitely one. So one man, one vote, one value, right? And these MLAs in turn would be electing Rajya Sabha MPs through indirect election. And in indirect election, one man, one vote, and multiple value, right? And the method that is being used is called as proportional representation through single transferable vote, right? And then 233 members are elected, correct? Now I'll explain here what is proportional representation. Also called as PR. As the name suggests, proportional representation. Let me take this case, this example again. Now in our case, in this case, A got 40 seats, B got 30, sorry, A got 40 votes, B got 30 votes, C got 15 votes, and D got 15 votes, right? So if I talk about the percentage share, definitely it is 40%, it is 30%, so on and so forth, right? Now assume that we know that there are 245 seats in Rajya Sabha, right? So party A would be, which got 40% of the votes, would be able to secure 40% of the seats in Rajya Sabha, right? So it would come to around 98 seats, right? So 98 seats would be won by candidate A, right? So candidate A would be getting 98 seats, and 98 seats is 40% of 245, right? So in this sense, candidate A secured 40% of the total votes, and in this manner he would be candidate A means, I am here considering the party, right? Because proportional representation is for the party. So party A secured 40% of the total votes, and in Rajya Sabha, party A would get 40% of the total seats. So 40% of 245 is 98. I hope it is clear. 40% of 245 is 98, right? So party A would get 98 seats in Rajya Sabha, right? So this is how the proportional representation works, right? So I repeat again, Rajya Sabha has 245 members, 233 are elected, 12 are nominated, right? Now these elected are being elected through indirect election, whereas nominated are the one who comes from different fields, who have excelled in different fields of literature, arts, social services and sciences under Article 82, right? Now we know that the method that we follow in Vidhan Sabha elections is first past the post. People through direct election elect the MLAs, one man, one vote, one value, through first past the post, and the candidate who has secured the highest number of votes is being declared as the winner, right? And then they in turn elect the Rajya Sabha MPs through indirect election. That is the method that he use is proportional representation through single transferable vote, right? Now in single proportional representation, the party who has secured, let's say, 40% of the votes would get 40% of the total seats in Rajya Sabha. So 40% of 245 is 98 seats, right? So party A has won 98 seats, right? So this is how the proportional representation works, and it is different from first past the post, right? So I hope it is clear, right? Now the constitution has says that the tenure of Rajya Sabha MPs or Rajya Sabha MPs is 6 years, right? Provided that 1/3 of 245 will be retiring every 2 years, right? So that means 1/3 of the 245 would be retiring every 2 years. So kitna hua 1/3 of 245? Let's see. 1/3 of 245. So 82. So 82 MPs would be retiring every 2 years, right? Are you getting? So the moment these 82 MPs would complete their 6 years, they would retire, right? So in this sense, 1/3 out of the total, 1/3 of the 245, that means 82 out of 245 would have completed their 6 years tenure, and they would be retiring every 2 years, right? So in this sense, Rajya Sabha is never subject to a dissolution, and therefore that is the reason why it is called as a permanent chamber or permanent house, because it is never subject to dissolution, right? So I hope these things are clear to you, right? So let us proceed ahead. So there are 13 Rajya Sabha seats, and these Rajya Sabha members have completed their 6 years and they are undergoing elections, right? So in the state of Kerala, Assam, Himachal, Tirupura and Nagaland, right? And this is how they have mentioned that how proportional representation works, right? As you can see, this refers to an electoral system in which the distribution of seats corresponds closely with the proportion of the total votes cast for each party, right? So in this sense, if I talk about the electoral college, we've already discussed it, and right, candidates fielded by the political parties have to be, all right. So those candidates who are being fielded by the Vidhan Sabha for the Rajya Sabha elections have to get support of at least 10 members in the assembly. So this is very important facts, and the 10 members here are called as proposers. So there are 10 proposers required for those candidates, right? Guys, you would be knowing that even a member from Rajya Sabha or MP from Rajya Sabha can become the Prime Minister, and rightly so. Prime Minister Manmohan Singh was coming from Rajya Sabha in both his terms, right? So at least 10 proposers are required, or 10% of the party's strength in the House, right? So when the question was being asked that why Nota is not there in Rajya Sabha elections, in 2018 Supreme Court made it very clear that Nota is only for general elections held on the basis of universal adult franchise in first past the post FPTP, and cannot be applied to indirect elections based on proportional representation. So Supreme Court has clearly made it very clear that Nota can only be used for general elections which are being held as per first past the post principle, and not for the indirect elections. I hope it is clear. So these are the differences between the proportional representation and first past the post. PR is an electoral device in which seats are allotted to the political parties on the basis of the number of votes polled for them, right? As we have discussed. Large geographical areas are termed as constituencies. Second, if I talk about the representation, one or more representative can be elected from one constituency. Very much true, right? For example, if I talk about Rajasthan, from Rajasthan there are 10 seats which go to Rajya Sabha, right? Whereas in first past the post or direct elections, only one representative is elected from each constituency. Votes, very important, in first past the post or direct elections, votes are casted for candidate, whereas in proportional representation, votes are casted for the party. If I talk about the seats, votes may or may not be equal to the seats got, right? Whereas a party gets seats as per the proportion of the votes. In our case, we discussed that party A, which secured 40% of the seats, was able to get 40% of 245, right? So somewhere around 98 seats, right? So in this sense, proportional representation has its own pros and cons. There are many countries like Israel which do have a proportional representation system, but it generally results into instability, right? Because there is no single largest party, and there are many parties which get representation in the legislature, right? So in this sense, these are the differences. Let us move to the next news article. Rupee has sinked to a lifetime low. Guys, Indian rupee has depreciated, and it is because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. We all know that Russia is also an oil producing country and a natural gas producing country, and definitely because after the advent of globalization, the global supply chains are interlinked, right? So if something happens in Ukraine, it would definitely have impact on India, right? So it has gone to almost 79 against $1. So Indian rupee is depreciating, right? So depreciation as a concept is like let's say yesterday $1 is equals to 74 rupees, and today $1 has gone to 77 rupees, right? So in this sense, the value of the money has depreciated, right? Has degraded, right? So this is called as depreciation, right? Now what would be the impact on imports? See, yesterday we were importing the commodities at 74 rupees. Today we have to pay 77 rupees for a dollar, against a dollar, right? So imports would become costlier, correct? Imports would become costlier, right? And we would see less of the imports, right? What would be the impact on exports? Well, yesterday for a commodity we got 74 rupees, but today when the trader sold his commodity in the international market, he gets 77 rupee. So definitely exports would become cheaper and they would increase. So in this sense, exports may be greater than imports, or you may also see trade surplus, or at least the trade deficit would reduce, correct? So it is there. Plus, when you are importing something, you have to pay more because the imports have become costlier, right? So in this sense, the domestic economy, or the price of the domestic goods would also increase, right? Because of the costlier imports, right? So this is how the depreciation impacts the market and the economy, right? So I hope we are clear with this. So this is how the rupee has fallen and has fell, and today it is, as I said, 77 rupees against a dollar. And we have discussed all these things. Costlier imports have cascading effect on local prices, something we discussed. And because guys, we are an oil importing nation, we do not have oil resources, and therefore we import oil from Gulf countries, and when the imports would become costlier, our oil prices would also shoot up, and rightly so. The crude oil has crossed $120 per barrel, right? And if I compare it with the last month, it was just $85 per barrel, right? So there has been huge spike in the international crude oil prices because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, right? Now, because the imports would become costlier, it would spike the domestic fuel prices, and which would in turn push up the prices of the other essential commodities. For example, because why? Because any country is heavily dependent on transportation, right? If the transportation cost would increase, it would definitely would have a detrimental effect on economy, and every commodity would see an increase in the prices. Now, a falling rupee could also hurt those looking for overseas education, right? So the overseas education would also become costlier, and those who are the travelers or overseas travelers would also have to rework their budget because of the costlier travel plans, right? So I hope we are clear with this basic economic concept. Moving to the next news article, awaiting government approval and the RBI guidelines on SWIFT transactions with Russian entities, right? So India's second largest public sector bank, Punjab National Bank, PNB, has said that it was awaiting advisory from Finance Ministry and RBI with regard to SWIFT related transaction with Russia. Guys, we have discussed it many a times. The concept of SWIFT. SWIFT is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. So it is a message which ensures speedy and safe transaction or interbank transaction. We have discussed it many times. It is used for the global banking transaction. It is safe and speedy banking transaction, and as we have discussed, that it is vital to emphasize that SWIFT does not handle money transfers. It acts as a secure texting system, right? So in this sense, it is normally 10 or 11 digit code. It has the country code, it has the city code, the branch code, and then the money is being transacted, right? So banks can rely on the secure messaging system to honor payment instructions without question. Guys, very important, SWIFT was founded in the year 1973 and it is headquartered at Belgium, right? It is governed by central banks from 11 industrial countries, including Canada, France, Germany, so on and so forth. It is also governed by European Central Bank and the G10 central banks of Belgium, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Netherlands, and UK. Guys, it's not that, and we all know that America has put economic sanctions on Russia, and they have removed Russia from the SWIFT list, and Iran was also cut off from the SWIFT in the year 2012, right? So ऐसा है कि पहले भी मतलब it has been done. Iran was also being cut off from the SWIFT in the year 2012. So what does the SWIFT ban on Russia mean? Forcing the country to rely on telephone or fax machine to process transactions. But Russia or Putin doesn't seem to be bothered about such sanctions, because they have their own SWIFT, as China have Cyprus, their own SWIFT. And because we have seen that in the last few years, there is a growing China-Russia nexus, right? And they are very big economy. China is a very big economy, and therefore Russia is not bothered about the sanctions from America, right? So coming to the editorials, students, and here we would be covering the editorials of the Hindu as well as Indian Express. Now, sealed cover jurisprudence is appalling. We have discussed it earlier, guys, that a media broadcasting company in Kerala called as Media One has been banned by the central government, right? It is a television channel in Kerala, and it has been banned because of some some reasons which are possibly not being liked by the central government, and it has been banned, right? When it appealed to the Kerala High Court, this appeal was being dismissed. Let us understand the issue. Now the ministry had said, right, because see, there is something called as, definitely when you are curtailing the rights of a media, what is media, right? It is the dissemination of information, right? So when you are curtailing any media, it is a violation of Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A. What is Clause 1, Subclause A? Freedom of speech and expression, right? At the same time, it is also the violation of Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause G. What is Subclause G? It is the freedom of profession, occupation, trade and business, POTB, right? So Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A is freedom of speech and expression. So when the government, bans any media or any television channel, it is definitely a violation of right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause A. Whereas at the same time, it also a violation of freedom of free, profession, occupation, trade and business, which is Article 19, Clause 1, Subclause G, right? Now definitely, guys, we know that no fundamental right except Article 17, which is abolition of untouchability, is absolute. There are restrictions. There are restrictions over fundamental rights. For example, the restrictions of national integrity, public order, health, morality, national security. So if let's say any speech of an individual or an agency is against the security or integrity of the nation, then definitely such freedom can be curtailed, right? So there is restriction which is clearly being mentioned under Article 19, Clause 2, right? The restrictions to the right to freedom under Article 19, correct? So we know, guys, that Article 19 talks about the right to freedom, and it has how many? 6 rights under it, right? So but there are legible restrictions subject to national integrity, sovereignty, security, morality, public order and health of the society, right? Now, so over only these grounds it can be restricted. Now guys, government has said that, and it has taken the, I would say, garb of national security in actually banning Media One channel. It is saying that the reasons for this ban cannot be mentioned, right? Because they are against the national security of the country, they are against integrity and sovereignty of the country, and that is the reason we cannot mention the reasons. And they have, you know, given the reasons in a sealed cover, in a sealed envelope to the High Court of Kerala, right? And in this sense they are able to evade the judicial review or judicial scrutiny of the courts, right? I would rephrase myself, I would repeat it again. See, these restrictions are very much there, and in Media One case the government has given the reasons for this ban in a sealed envelope, right, quoting that it is against the security integrity of the nation, right? And in this way it is able to evade the judicial scrutiny of the courts, right? So ministry had said that license could not be renewed for reasons related to national security, right? So they are giving the reason of national security. And guys, I hope it is clear. So these are the rights which are being violated, as we have discussed. The trouble is emanating from the Media One judgment is that the state need not even show that its security is threatened. Are you getting my point? So they have not even disclosed that the security is threatened, and it can conveniently choose the sealed cover route. The jurisprudence of sealed cover is an appalling trend. It is very sad, you know, when the government actually use the sealed cover or sealed envelope to give their reasons in order to evade the judicial scrutiny. Guys, the executive must cogently answer its actions, especially when fundamental rights such as free speech are curtailed. Otherwise it would lead to the tyranny of executive, the abuse of the power by the executive, right? So there must be proper check and balance. There are some constitutional cases which the court cases which can be discussed here. India's constitution does not give a free hand to the executive to pass arbitrary orders violating such rights. However, in Supreme Court has repeatedly held that judicial review, guys, you all know, is a basic structure of the constitution, and it has been upheld by the Supreme Court in Minerva Mills versus Union of India 1980, and as well as L. Chandrakumar versus Union of India in the year 1997, right? At the same time, if the executive wishes to take away or infringe any of the rights, you know, then it must show, that means the executive must show the test of reasonable restrictions. So there is a test of reasonable restrictions, right? So this has to be shown, right? That means, let's say if executive or of the central government was to ban or had banned internet in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, they had to show the reasonable restrictions, that of public order, integrity, security of the area. Similarly, in the state of Rajasthan also, there have been many times we have seen that in order for the conduct of the examinations, public examinations, government examination, the internet is generally being banned, right? So they do show the reasonable restrictions, but such internet bans are actually, you know, go against the very basic human rights of speech and expression, right? Now the sealed cover practice inverses this position, and the moment the executive utters Nash. So in this sense, guys, the moment the executive says that it is something which is related to national security, the courts often permit them to inform the justification in a sealed cover, right? And these reasons are not disclosed to the party whose rights are clearly at stake. Very importantly and very sad, guys, the reasons, because they are being enclosed in a sealed envelope, they are not disclosed to the party whose rights are being violated, right? For example, in this case, Media One television channel, the court satisfies itself of defense of the state and dismisses the petition, right? I hope we are clear with this. The judgment creates a situation that endorses the breach of fundamental rights on the one hand and blocks. So guys, this judgment of Kerala High Court dismissing the plea of the Media One channel is not only endorsing or supporting the breach of the fundamental rights, at the same time it is also blocking any remedy available for the victim through the court of law, right? So in this, the sealed cover actually blocks the remedy also, the legal remedy also, right? So in this sense, it is a very difficult situation, and this is an emulation of the tenor in the judgment of ADM Jabalpur. Guys, when the emergency was being imposed by Indira Gandhi government in the year 1975, and it went up till 1977, in 1976 the case came called, very famous case, ADM Jabalpur 1976. In this case, it was being held that the fundamental rights could be suspended during the emergency with no scope for assessment by court, right? I repeat again, in ADM Jabalpur, which is a dark chapter in the history of India, the court said that fundamental rights can be restricted during emergency, right? They can be suspended during the emergency with no scope of judicial review. However, guys, ADM Jabalpur was later being challenged, and we know that 44th Amendment Act under the first non-Congress government, 1978, actually, you know, changed the scope of Article 352 and 352, which is the emergency article or the national emergency, and now it is very much limited, right? So in this sense, the recent trend in the judicial review has been as opposed to the principles of natural justice as that of the sealed cover. And at the High Court, national security came to mean absolute impunity for the center, right? So this is what the case talks about. I hope you are getting my point, guys. Even the court has said that the court is bound to examine the legality of the action through lens of proportionality. Lens of proportionality means the rights which are being taken away by the executive or by the government, you know, what proportion of it would benefit the society at large, right? So this is called as the lens of proportionality. Now, in the Modern Dental College versus State of Madhya Pradesh, very important case, guys, please mark this up. Modern Dental College versus State of Madhya Pradesh, 2016. The apex court adopted the proportionality test proposed by Ahoran Barak, the former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Israel. A limitation of a constitutional right will be constitutionally permissible. That means there are some conditions being laid out in Modern Dental College versus State of Madhya Pradesh that the fundamental rights can be restricted only in these circumstances. First, if it is designated for a proper purpose. Second, if the measures, that means the proper purpose or the end should be justified. The measures undertaken to effectuate such a limitation are rationally connected to the fulfillment of that purpose. For example, when the state of Jammu and Kashmir, internet was being banned, public movements were being restricted. So the reason that the government gave was the happiness for the maximum people, right? For the ultimate objective was the government was installing or ensuring good governance in Jammu and Kashmir, right? So it is designated for a proper purpose, right? The measures undertaken are necessary in that there are no alternative measures that may similarly achieve that same purpose with a lesser degree of limitation. And finally, there needs to be a proper relation, that means proportionality stricto sensu, right? So there need to be a proper relation, proper proportionality stricto sensu, or also called as balancing, right, between the importance of achieving the proper purpose and the social importance of preventing the limitation on the constitutional right. Guys, the same principle was also being reiterated by case Puttaswamy versus Union of India in 2017, which came up with right to privacy. But this entire process of proportionality analysis is sidelined by the High Court. I hope it is clear. So we are clear with the case Modern Dental College versus State of Madhya Pradesh. We are clear with case Puttaswamy versus Union of India, right? Guys, the High Court also instead relied on the Supreme Court judgment of the year 2009 with regard to Dizzy Cable Network versus Union of India. Very important. Dizzy Cable versus Union of India 2019. And in this case, the court reiterated the principle in an earlier judgment called Ex-Army Men's Protection Services Private Limited, right? So Ex-Army Men's Protection Service Private Limited And here the High Court reiterated what the top court said in Digi Cable. So this is what the Supreme Court said in Digi Cable case of the year 2019, that in a situation of national security, a party cannot insist for the strict observance of the principles of natural justice. That means if the national security is under threat, then the government would have overriding powers to even snatch away or even violate or infringe your fundamental rights, and it may not insist, it cannot do the strict observance of the principles of natural justice, right? Now the question is that, can the government use the security clause, to actually turn off, to actually, violate their fundamental rights? So this is under question, right? And guys, the second was the 3-judge bench in Pegasus case. In Pegasus case, as you all know, it was Manohar Lal Sharma versus Union of India 2021. Manohar Lal Sharma versus Union of India 2021, where the court has categorically held that the state does not get a free pass. So in Pegasus case, which was a Israeli spying agency, and here the it was being said that the state would not get a free pass every time the specter of national security is raised. मतलब कि जब भी आप national security का नाम लो और आप कुछ भी कर लो, ऐसा allow नहीं होगा, right? So that means the government or the state would not get the free pass or free ride every time the specter of the national security is raised, and that national security cannot be the bugbear that the judiciary shies away from by virtue of its mere mentioning, right? So there have been many cases where the government has used the clause of national security in order to get itself completely immune from the judicial scrutiny. I hope we are clear with this article, right? So in this sense, guys, the High Court of Kerala has possibly used the Digi Cable Network versus Union of India case of 2019, right? And so this is the case, right? I hope we are clear with this. Guys, today is International Women's Day, and we all know that on 8th of March, International Women's Day is celebrated. The theme of this year is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. Very important. They may ask you the theme of the International Women's Day 2022. So it is gender equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. Guys, as far as the female workforce is concerned, there are only 5% of the female workforce employed in formal sector, whereas 95% are still in informal sector, and that is the worry, right? There is a lack of child care solutions, and which is a serious concern, and there is a feminization of poverty, right? Even the statutory maternity leave is among the global top 3, right? Although, guys, there are some positive things. In India is ahead of many advanced countries. In the formal sector where the females are employed, we have very good number of maternity leaves, almost around 6 months. That is 26 weeks. And as per the Maternity Benefit Amendment Act, so this is something which is important. Maternity Benefit Amendment Act of the year 2017, it has clearly said that the maternity leave for women employees is up to 26 weeks, and 26 weeks is almost 6.5 months, proposing an option for WFH or work from home after this period on mutual agreement with the employer, and made the creche facilities, that means the child care facility, creche facilities, mandatory for establishments employing 50 or more women, right? So the creche facilities are mandatory for establishments where more than 50 or more female employers are employed, right? So this is these are the two provisions of Maternity Benefit Amendment Act of 2017. Number 1, maternity leave should be up to 26 weeks plus an option to work from home, plus the creche facilities is mandatory for establishments employing 50 or more women, right? But sadly, this is only there in 5% of the female workforce which are working in the formal sector. Rest 95% of the female workforce are employed in, let's say, construction sector, building sector, labor, so on and so forth, right? There is lack of access to quality childcare services, right? In this sense, and they are recommending that why not extend the ICDS or Integrated Child Development Services infrastructure. There is a need for revitalizing national crash schemes and improving the maternity benefits, right? So the Anganwadi centers which were being set up under the ICDS were to provide the maternal and child nutritional security, a clean and safe environment, and early childhood education, right? Guys, we all know that as per the National Education Policy NEP 2020, it has mandated the quality education for children up to 0 to 6 years of age group, right? So for the first time in Indian history, the special focus has been laid upon in the children of 0 to 6 years age group, and they have clearly said that quality early childhood care and education for 0 to 6 age group children, right? It would happen only when we have good, maternity facilities, we have good crash facilities, right? So there are some limitations under ICDS which possibly are being explored by NEP. Number one, it does not cater to children under the age of 3, right? So that means only above 3. Second, it functions only for a few hours a day, making it inconvenient to send and pick up the children during work hours or avail take-home rations provided to pregnant women, right? So in this sense, they must extend the hours of Anganwadi centers. The National Crash scheme is also there, guys, which lays out specific provisions for working women but has suffered diminished government funding. So the National Crash scheme is not receiving sufficient government funding. There are implementation gaps which have to be overcome, and there are many crash which are being started by various NGOs like Seva Sangani, like Ajivika Bureau in Ahmedabad. They may ask you about this. Ajivika Bureau, Ahmedabad. Similarly, mobile crashes in Delhi. At the same time, there is also, NFSA or National Food Security Act of 2013, which entitles pregnant and lactating mothers to a cash transfer of at least 6,000 rupees, right? So they may ask you this question, that under NFSA, National Food Security Act 2013, how much amount would be transferred for pregnant and lactating mothers? So it is rupees 6,000. However, the scheme which is being notified for this purpose, which is PMMVY or Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, limits the benefit to the first birth and has also reduced the amount to 5,000, right? So this is the difference between NFSA, and they may ask you questions with regard to the same NFSA versus Pradhan Mantri Matrutva Vandana Yojana, right? So here it is 6K, here it is 5K, plus it is only for first birth. However, now they have changed to the second birth also. So guys, these are the schemes being launched in various states for maternity benefits and crash facilities, and they may ask you the questions with regard to same. In Tamil Nadu, there is a scheme called as Dr. Muthulakshmi Maternity Benefit Scheme. In Rajasthan, the scheme is by the name Indira Gandhi Maternity Nutrition Scheme. In Odisha, there is a scheme called as Mamta Scheme. Gujarat, the scheme is called as Kasturba Poshan Sahay Yojana. Chhattisgarh, the scheme is called as Kaushalya Maternity Scheme. Right, in this sense, the minimum wages are inadequate, and definitely this area needs to be explored. I hope we are clear with this article. Right. Let us move to the next article. How invasion of Ukraine could transform the nuclear landscape of Asia. Guys, today is the 12th day of Russian invasion of Ukraine, and Russia and Putin has clearly set his forces on alert at the nuclear facilities in Russia, and it is a clear hint that if any country provokes, he would not deter to use even the nuclear weapons. We all know that after the invasion on 24th of February, on the very first day, Chernobyl nuclear plant, which is although decommissioned, was being occupied and captured by the Russian forces. The Russian forces few days back have also captured Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is the Europe's largest nuclear power plant, and they are in a few days time they are moving forward to actually capture the third nuclear power plant in Ukraine, called as Yuzhno-Rinsk nuclear power plant. Yuzhno-Rinsk nuclear power plant, located in Ukraine's southern Mykolaiv region, right? It is under threat. Now, there are possibilities that the other Asian countries, may also start, expanding their nuclear landscape. And there is a debate on importance of atomic weapons in deterring Chinese expansionism. We all know that China is expanding, and in this one China policy, it also claims Taiwan and many islands in the South China Sea. So therefore, to deter this Chinese expansion, the Southern Asia, right, may also, adopt the nuclear weapons. As you can see, in even the South Korea, which is electing its president this week, and the front runner for the same is Yoon Suk Yeol. He has talked of strengthening Seoul's nuclear deterrence against both North Korea and China, right? At the same time, Japan is also, which do not have nuclear weapon, it is also talking about hosting American nuclear weapons on its Japanese soil. We also know that UK, US and Australia under AUKUS, where US would be providing, would be building the nuclear powered submarines. So this project has also been accelerated in order to counter China in the Indo-Pacific. And Taiwan, which is in the crosshairs of President Xi Jinping regional strategy, is reportedly developing a nuclear powered submarine, right? So Taiwan is also developing nuclear powered submarine. Even a few days back we have discussed that Philippines is also procuring BrahMos missile from India to deter Chinese expansionism in South China Sea, right? So this is the background. There has been a nuclear sharing arrangements between US and some European allies like Belgium, Germany, Italy and Netherlands, and there is strengthening conventional deterrence to stop Putin's adventurism in the continent, and but definitely it may lead to a catastrophe which none of us want, right? So this article talks about the recent change in the stance of Germany, where German decision to discard its entrenched pacifism. Pacifism means neutrality. So Germany has clearly decided and proclaimed that she would discard its pacifism and would embark on a course of rearmament, right? So Germany is also in the process of rearmament, right? So these are some important points about the article, and this is an article which is important, I believe, and it must be read. So in this sense, guys, in Taiwan and Australia, the emphasis is on developing nuclear powered submarines, right? And this is all for today. I hope you understood the session. Thanks for staying here. Stay tuned. That's all for today. Good day. Goodbye.